Alright, man, it's KING-KAMBUF, 100 proof, bringing you nothing but the truth. And we on really stepped it up, leveled up. Here, we on got into some open AI, and we're straight deep diving into this baby with all ferocity to learn the ins and outs of this new age technology. This is KING-KAMBUF, 100 proof, bringing you nothing but the truth. We about to get started here. So we're gonna dip into some guides, and it starts off with some text completion. Learn how to generate and manipulate text. Here we go. Open AI. It's the codex. The codex. Introduction. The completion endpoints can be used for a variety of tasks. It provides a simple but powerful interface to our models. You input some text as a prompt, and the model will generate a text completion that attempts to match whatever context or pattern you give it. For example, you give the API the prompt for a discarded said, "I think therefore I will return the completion. I am the high probability." The best way to start exploring completions, you see, is through a playground. Our playground is simply a text box where you can submit a prompt and generate a completion. To try it out for yourself, follow this link. See, write a tagline for an ice cream shop. Once you submit, you'll see something like this. Write a tagline for an ice cream shop. We serve up smiles with every fucking scoop or drop. The actual completion may see many difference because API is a stochastic by default. This means that you might get a slightly different completion every time you call it, even if the prompt says the same thing, and you can't control this behavior with the temperature setting. The simple text in to text in out interfacing means that you can program the model by providing instructions or just a few examples of what you would like to do. Its success general depend on the complexity of the task and the quality of your prompt. A good rule of thumb is to think about how you would like to write a word problem for middle schooler to solve. A well-written prompt provides enough information for the model to know what and how you should respond. This guide covers general prompts, designs, best practices, and examples of the mind. To learn about working with code using our codex models, visit Code Guide. Keep in mind that the default model training data cuts off in 2021. So there may not have knowledge of current events we add to and some contains training in the future. So let's get into it. Prompt design. Basics. Our models can do everything from generate original stories to performing complex text analyses. Because they can do so many things, you can be explicit in describing what you want. Showing not to tell is often the secret of a good prompt. This is 3 basic guidelines to create prompts. Show and tell, make it clear what you want. Either instructions, examples, and combinations of the two. If you want a model, rank a list the items in alphabetical order or classify them as a paragraph by sentiment, how would you want it. Provide quality data if you're trying to build on it, a classifier, or get a model flyer. Following the pattern, make sure you ain't no liar. That there's enough examples, be sure to proofread your proofs. Examples for the model is usually smart enough to see the basic spelling mistakes well enough and gives you a response, but it's also might assume this is intentional and it can affect the response. So check it out. Check your settings and temperature and top it out. Settings control high during mystic tone. The models and the greetings and the response though. It's about if you're asking for a response, and if there's one right answer, then you're not one of the set these a little bit lower. If you're looking for a more diverse response slower, then you might want to set them higher. The number one mistake people use in this setting night is assuming that they were too cleverness and creative controls on this. Troubleshooting. If you're having trouble getting the API to perform as expected, follow these checklists. Is it clear what you intend? Generation should be very clear from within. If there are enough examples, did you check for examples for mistakes? The API won't tell you directly. Are you using the temperature things correctly? Classification. The next classifier from the API date, we provide a description of the task and a few examples. In this example, we'll show you how to classify the sentiment of the tweets. Decide whether a tweet sentiment is positive, neutral, or negative. Tweet, I love the new Batman movie. Sentiment, open in the playground. It's worthy to pay attention to the several features in this example. You see, pay attention. Use plain language to describe your inputs and outputs. We use plain language in the input tweet and the expected output sentiment as the best practice. Start with plain language descriptions, while you can often use shorthand or keys to indicate and improve the input and the output. It's best to start by being descriptive and possible, and then work backwards to remove extra words and see the performance stay consistent. Show the API how to respond in any case. And if this example, we include the positive sentiment labels in our instructions. Natural labels tables is important because there are so many cases when even a human would have a hard time to determine if something is positive or negative in situations, whether or not it's this. You need the fewer examples for familiar tasks for the classifier. We don't provide any examples. This is because the API already has an understanding of sentiment and the concept of a tweet. If you're building a classifier for something the API might not be familiar with, it might be necessary to provide more examples to her, improving the classifier's efficiency. Now that you have the graphs on how to build a classifier, let's take an example and make it even more efficient so you can use it to get multiple results back from the API called classify the sentiment in these tweets. I can't stand homework. This sucks. I'm bored. I can't wait for Halloween. My cat is adorable. I hate chocolate. Tweets of sentiments rating on open playground. Singing. We provide a number list, a tweet, so the API can handle this. Rate this 5 and even a more up. Tweets just one API will call up. It's important to note that when you ask the API to create lists or evaluate text, you need to pay extra attention to your probability settings, top P or temperature, to avoid drift. Make sure your probability settings is calibrated accordingly correctly by running multiple tests. Don't make your list too long or the API is likely to drift. Generations on the most powerful yet simple task you can accomplish on the API is generating new ideas ideas are versions of inputting. You can ask anything from stories to ideas to business plans to characters, descriptions, and market slogans. In this example, you'll use the API to create idealins and use virtual realities in fitness. Brainstorm some ideas combining VR and fitness. Open playground, hit the click. If need, you can improve the quality of the responsiveness by including some examples in your prompt. Conversations from the mouth. The API is extremely adept at carrying out on conversations with humans and even with itself. With this, just a few lines of instructions, we've seen the API perform as a customer service chatbot with intelligibly answers questions without getting even flustered. Our wisecracking conversation partner that makes jokes and puns is key. Is tell the API how it should behave, and when it provides a few examples, here's an example of the API playing the role of an AI answering questions. The following is a question with the AI assistant. The assistant is helpful, creative, clever, and very friendly. Human, hello, how are you? The AI, I am an AI created by OpenAI. How can I help you today? This is all it takes to create a chat box capable of carrying on conversations. Underneath its simplicity, there's a simple thing, several things going on that are worth paying attention to. We'll tell the API the intent, but we'll also tell them how to behave. Just like the other prompts, we cue the API into what's examples represent, but we also added another key. Don't be doubtful details, and we can give explicit instructions on how the interactions with the phrases. The assistance is helpful, creating clever and very friendly. Without the instructions, the API might stray and mimic the human's interaction with the become sarcastic, and some other behavior we may not want or want to avoid labor. We give the API an identity to start, and we will have the API's response, you see. And the AI assistance, while the API has no eccentric identity, this helps to provide a response in a way that is close to the truth as possible, we say. And you can use identity in other ways to create the other kind of chat bots you see today. If you tell the API to respond as a woman who works in the research sciences and biology, you'll get intelligent and thoughtful comments from the API, similar to what you expect from someone with that background. In this example, we create a chat box that is a little bit sarcastic and reluctant to answer questions. More is the chat box that reluctantly answers questions with sarcastic responses. How many pounds are in a kilogram? This again, there are 2.2 pounds in a kilogram. Please make note of this. Ha ha ha. What does HTML stands for? Was Google too busy? Hypertext markup language. The T is for try to ask better questions in the future. Wow. When did the first airplane fly? Marv, on December 17th, 1903. Wilbur Orville Wright made the first flight. I wish they'd come and take me away. Ha ha ha. What is the meaning of life? I'm not sure. I'll ask my friend Google. He says, why is the sky so blue? And so on and so on. To create an amusing and somewhat helpful chatterbox, we provide a few examples of questions and answers showing the API how to reply. All it takes is a few sarcastic response, and the API is able to pick up on the pattern and provide an endless number of snarky responses. We see transformations in the API's language Model is from the familiar and the variety of the ways that the words and the characters can be used to express information. This ranges from natural language, text, and code in languages other than English. The API is also able to understand content on a level that allows it to summarize, convert, and express it in different ways. Translation. This example, we show the API, how to convert the English to French, Spanish, and Japanese. Translate this into French, Spanish, and Japanese. What rooms do I have available? This example works because the API already has a grasp on these languages, so there's no need to teach them it. If you want to translate from English to a language the API is unfamiliar with, you need to provide it with more examples or fine-tune a model to do it fluently. Conversing, it is an example we convert in names of the movies into emojis. See, showing adaptedly of the API to the picking up patterns and working with other characteristics. Movie titles, emojis, Back to the Future. And it is interesting. Summarization. The API is able to grasp the context and the text and rephrase it in different ways. In this example, we create an explanation of a child will understand how long for more sophisticated text passage. This illustrates that the API has a deep grasp on the language. Summarize this for a second grade student. Jupiter is the fifth planet from the Sun and the largest in the solar system. It is a gas giant with mass 1,000th part of the Sun, but 2.5 times as large as other planets in the solar system combined. Jupiter is one of the brightest objects visible to the naked eye in the night sky. It has been known to ancient civilizations since before recorded history. It is named after the Roman god Jupiter. When viewed from the Earth, Jupiter can be bright enough that it reflects light to the east, visible shadows, and is on average the third brightest natural object in the night sky after the Moon and Venus. Completion. While all these prompts result in completion, it can be helpful to think of the text completion as its own task and instance, where if you want the API to pick up where you left off, for example, given this prompt, the API will continue to train a thought about the vertical framing. You can even lower the temperature setting to keep the API more focused on the intent of the prompt and increase it to let it go off tangent. We see vertical framing provides a novel solution for producing food locally, reproducing transportation and costs, and all that you see. This is the next prompt. Shows how you can use completion to help write React components. We send some code to the API and it's able to continue the rest because it has an understanding of the React library. We recommend using codex models, for example, that involves understanding of generating code. To learn more, visit our code guide. Import React from React, cost header component equals fractional responses. The API has a lot of knowledge that it's learned and the data that it's been trained on. It also has the ability to provide responses that sound very real but are made up, made up. And then there are two ways to limit up the likelihood of the API making up answers. Provide a ground truth for the API. If you provide the API with a body of context to answer questions like about Wikipedia entries, it will be less likely to confabulate a response. Use the low probability and show the API how, say, I don't know. And if the API understands that, in the case though, where we less certain about the response and saying that I don't know in some variation is appropriate. If will less inclined to make up answers on the mind. And if the example we give is the API's example of the question and answers it, and it knows that the example of the things would be known and provide question marks at our home, we also see the probability to zero and see the API is most likely to respond with an A question mark if there's any doubt. Who is Batman? Batman is a fictional comic book character. What is the Torchplicity? I don't know. What is Dev Nines? I don't know. Who is George Lucas? George Lucas is an American film director that produces famous creating Star Wars and so on and so on. In certain texts, the completion endpoint. This is a beta. Insert text endpoint also supports inserting text within the text by providing a suffix prompt in addition to the prefix prompt. The need naturally arises when writing long form text transitional between paragraphs. Follow the outline though and guide the model towards the end. This is the work on the code has been and can be used to insert in the middle of a function or file while the code guide learns something to illustrate how important suffix context is and the ability to predict. Consider the prompt today. I decided to make a big change. There's many ways one can imagine completing the sentence, but if we know the supply and end of the story, I've got many complaints on my new hair. The extended contemplation comes clear. I went to college at Boston University. At getting my degree, I decided to make a change, a big change. I packed my bags and moved to the west coast of the United States. Now I can go get enough from the Pacific Ocean. By providing the model with additional text, it can be much more steerable. Wherever this is more constrained, there's a challenge to task of the model. Best practices. Inserting text and new features in the beta you have here, making a modifier and a way to use the API for better results. Here's a few of the best practice, no joke. Use max tokens 256. The model is better at certain longer computations into too small max tokens, and models may be cut off before it is available to context and get the suffix. Note that the will only be charged for the number of tokens produced, even when using large max tokens. True. Prefer sessions, finish sessions, reasons. Stop when the model reaches a natural stopping point. It use provider and stop sequence, and it will set finish reasons as stops and indicate that the model has managed to connect the suffix will as a good signal for the quality of completion. This is especially relevant for choosing between a few completions when using n is greater than 1 and the resampling. See the next point, son. Sampling 3-5 times while most all computations, completions, connections to the prefix and the model may struggle to connect the suffix. In harder cases is that we find the resampling 3 to 5 times and using best within the K35 and picking up examples with stops and hearing the finished reasons can be effective way. In such cases, while resampling, you would typically want a higher temperature rattling and the increased diversity. Note, if all returned sample have finished reason and the length, it's likely that max tokens is too small and the model runs out of tokens before it manages to connect the prompt to the suffix. Naturally consider increasing max tokens before resampling. Give it a try. More clues. In some cases, call the news. It's better to help the model generation. You can provide clues by giving a few examples, suggestions, and patterns that the model can follow to decide the natural place to stop. How to make a delicious hot chocolate. Boil water. Put hot chocolate in a cup. Add boiling water to the cup. Enjoy the hot chocolate. Dogs are loyal animals. Edited text. Here we go. The editing endpoints, the eds, the ends, and can be used from the edit text rather than just completing and providing some text and the instruction of how to modify it. And the text Da Vinci Edit 001, the model will attempt to edit it, son, according to the natural interface for translating, editing, a tweet text. This is also useful for refactoring and working with code. Visit the code guide to learn more. During the initial beta period, usage of edits endpoints is free. Example, input GPT-3. It is very nice AI, pretty good at writing replies. When it also is a question, it gives a suggestion. This is a poem that it made, that it rhymes. Instruction, this is the note of the voice of the GPT-3 output. I am a very nice AI. I am pretty good at writing replies. When I am asked a question, I give my suggestion. This is a poem I made that rhymes. This is King-KAMBUF, bringing you nothing but the truth. When we come back, we're going to get into code completions. 100 proof, bringing you nothing but the truth. King-KAMBUF on some open AI codex and proofs. Oh man.